All right, so now we're ready to program some sensors. Let's take a look. So you'll want to grab out something that looks like this from your kit, something that's got a red, a black, and a yellow wire. And on the end, this one is a light sensor. Everybody should have one of these. So everybody grab out a light sensor. It's got kind of a flat piece and then this little thing that kind of looks like an LED. And we're going to plug this into sensor port 1 on our robot. So here's the sensor ports down here, 1, 2, and 3. And then you'll see it says S, positive and negative. But we know that the black wire goes into the negative, so I can put that in there right now, black wire. The red one is going to go into the positive slot. And then the yellow one is going to go into the S slot. S actually stands for signal, but I like to remember that S stands for sunshine, which is how I remember it's the yellow one. So we've got our light sensor plugged in, and we're going to use it to control a single color LED. Let's go to MakeCode and see how to do that. So in MakeCode, we've just been adding forever loops, which is a totally fine thing to do if you're doing like only programming that applies to outputs. But when you start to use one that applies to inputs, sometimes they can kind of interfere with each other. So it's a good idea to put away and throw away any code that you're not going to use. So make your screen look like mine so that you've got an on start with a start Hummingbird block, and you've also got an empty forever loop. So I said that we were going to control the single color LED, so let's go into the Hummingbird folder and find our single color LED block. Great. And then let's go back into the Hummingbird folder, and we need to go find the block that's associated with our light sensor. So see the one down here that says Hummingbird Light 1? I'm going to drag that out and not connect it to anything at the moment, because I want to show you if you happened to plug in a different sensor, or if you want to program a different sensor, all of the different sensors are all controlled with this same block. So whatever kind of sensor you've got, you'd want to choose that one. We've got a light sensor plugged in. And here's where you'd select the port that you're plugged into, and we're plugged into port 1. So one of the things that I love about block-based coding is that color and shape matter. So all of the blocks that we've programmed with so far have this sort of like jack-o'-lantern puzzle piece kind of thing missing from the top and sticking out the bottom, and that tells you that they can snap together. But our light sensor doesn't have that. It's rounded on the sides, so it's going to go in a different place. Watch where I'm going to put this. I can put it up right where it says 0% brightness, and I can drop it right in there. So your light sensor, that block works a little bit differently, and we'll discuss why in just a minute. But let's go ahead and download this program just to see what it does, and then we'll use that to talk about sensors. So you can go ahead and download. Make sure that you've got your microbit selected as the location. And so you can see it is blinking rapidly underneath, and I'm going to grab my single color LED and my light sensor to show you what happens here. I'm going to move my motor out of the way. Here we go. So there's my light. It's on really brightly, but watch what happens as I cover up my light sensor. My single color LED dims, because what it's doing, if I show the code next to the component working, you'll see that the LED, the brightness of the LED is being set to whatever data this sensor is bringing in. So if I cover it up and it's at like 0% brightness in the room, then my LED is at 0% brightness. If I point it right at a bright light and it's at 100% brightness, then my LED is at 100% brightness. So that's one way to use a sensor, but if we think about it, that's not generally how sensors are used. Usually if you think about sensors that you've seen before, like in a room where you walk in and you move and it activates the light in the room, or like a motion sensor or a distance sensor that you might see at the grocery store that automatically opens a door for you. It's not like as you get closer, the door opens more, although that would be kind of fun. That's not really how most sensors work. Most sensors, they set what's called a threshold. If you're above this, then the door is closed. If you're below this, then the door is open. And it's either open all the way or closed all the way. But in order to be able to set a threshold, we should know what number this is generating. So let's figure out how to do that right now in MakeCode. So break these couple of blocks apart. We're going to use them for parts in just a minute. But I want to have my microbit, the little LED part that's currently displaying a smiley face, I want to have that show me the number that this light sensor is generating. So to do that, we're going to go up into the basic blocks and find that very first one that says show number. This will show us a number on the microbit. What number do we want to see? We want to see the value of our light sensor. So you can nest that right in there. Then go ahead and download that program and let's see it work. I'm going to select my microbit. Great. We're downloading. And now, after it does its 5 seconds of downloading, it's going to start to scroll a number across. It gives us a happy face. Now it's going to scroll the number 91. Oh, because I have really bright lights in this room, so it's saying 91. If I cover it up, though, this says 2. Now it's at 7. Now it's at 20. I've got really bright lights in this room. 35, right? 66, so it's letting more light in the room as I'm moving my hand around. It's letting more and less light into the light sensor. So this is telling us the number that it's reading. Now, I have really bright lights in my room, so it's reading some really high numbers. You might be reading a little bit lower than that. If you took your cell phone flashlight and shined it right at it, I wonder how close you could get to 100, which is like full brightness. So now you know about what number your room is reading, whatever room you're in. Again, I'm in a bright room, so it's reading pretty high in the 70s, 80s, and 90s of brightness. But I can use this number now to set a threshold for when I want my light to turn on and off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that when it is dark, the light turns on, and when it's bright, the light turns off, just like a night light that you might plug in your bathroom or in your bedroom. So here's how to do that. Again, I'm going to break these apart. I'm going to throw away the show number block. I don't need that one anymore. But now what we need to do is we need to go into the logic blocks. I haven't used these yet, but we're going to find one that says if true, then else. Kind of looks like a trident, and put it in our forever loop. So if true, in this true space, this is where we're going to define that threshold, that line in the sand, that if it's darker than this, turn the light on. If it's brighter than this, turn the light off. That's where we're going to set our threshold. And so to do that, we're going to go back into logic and get a comparison block. We're going to get the less than block. So it's got a little mouth that's open. Grab that one and you can drop it right into where it says true because it's got that shape, right? It's got this hexagonal shape, so we know it'll fit right there. So if 0 is less than 0, well, that doesn't make any sense. What are we using to gather data with again? We're using the light sensor. So let's drop the light sensor into that first hole there, into that first space where it says 0. Okay, now this is starting to make some sense. If the light sensor senses that we are less than, and this is where we draw our line in the sand. So I'm going to put 20 in there. I'm going to type the number 20 in there. So we're going to say if the light sensor senses that it is less than 20% brightness, meaning it's dark, I want to turn my single color LED on, right? You want the light to be on when it's dark. Else, that means otherwise, meaning if this isn't true, so if it's bright, I want my LED to be off. So I'm going to duplicate that, put it here, and set it to 0. So now if I were to read this program like a sentence, it would read, if the light sensor senses that there is less than 20% illumination in the room, then turn the single color LED on. Else, or otherwise, turn it off. So let's download this program and see how that goes. Save. Great. We've got our blinking light for about 5 seconds. Here we go. And now I've got my light sensor and my LED. I'm holding them both in one hand here. So my light should be off until I cover up my light sensor, ta-da, and then it turns on because we programmed it with that conditional statement.